Hey, Kelly, I got bad news for you.
Uh-oh.
Yep. You screwed up the job, kid. Yep, I know.
Great.
I know. And so this short attention span webinar, which came at the suggestion of a short attention span listener. How's that?
Fantastic.
We have fans. We have groupies.
Well, because everybody's been through it. That's why.
Everybody's been through that. That's right. You know, and we know the drill, right? Great opportunity, great account, and that set up a gigantic screw-up. I mean, everything went wrong, right down to the truck driver just kicking the customer in the knee on the way out the door. Everything. So, Kelly, this has happened to you before. What's at stake here?
Well, your reputation, the entire reputation of your company, everything hinges on how you handle this. So your customer, everyone's going to be looking to you to assess where, what is your company made of? What are you made of? Because how you handle it, your resolve, your determination to come up with a solution is tantamount here. You have this, it actually can turn out to be kind of a PR opportunity to say, this is the kind of company that we are. We operate with integrity. We operate with a sense of urgency. We're responsive, and we are going to fix this. That's the mindset that you have to have in order to come out of it on the other end with that relationship intact and with your reputation intact.
It sounds crazy, doesn't it? It's like, oh, good, there's a problem.
Right.
So, Kelly, what do we do to make that happen? Well, the first thing you want to do is prepare. What I mean by that is have the options ready. Well, no kidding, there's a problem. And no kidding, it's not going to do as is. So before you pick up the phone, if you've got time, sometimes it's not, it might take more time than you've got, but ideally, you go back, you figure out, okay, how long would a complete reprint take? What are we talking about here? Is it a 50,000 run, a 500,000 run, or a 500 run on a digital copier? How long? And what about a partial? If the customer says, well, it's a trade show, I only need 500 for tomorrow, how can we make that happen? And then what about other options? If they've got, say, special paper that takes a long time, special binding, so that maybe it's like, okay, gang, it's going to take 3 weeks for a full reprint. It's going to take 3 days for digital, and it's going to, if I can get rid of the paper, if I can change it, and if I can change the binding and maybe change the UV coating, I can get you a full reprint in about 4 days. So you bring all those options to the table, and then, Kelly, the first thing we say to the customer, which never gets said, is what?
I am so sorry.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
I mean, people forget to say that. What do? They say, oh, gosh, Kelly, let me tell you what happened.
Yeah, it's very, very important to apologize and be very, very sincere about it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And put it in writing, and I tell you, it's crazy that we have to put that on the slide, but that's absolutely what gets forgotten, But I'm also going to say to you, Kelly, that my goal is to show you what kind of a company we are. Everybody talks about having great service. This is a chance for me to show you what our great service looks like. And my goal is to come out better than as if the problem had never happened. And I'm going to state that goal. First of all, then, Kelly, tell me what your immediate needs are. Now, if you come back and you say, Bill, I can't believe you screwed this job up. Oh, my God, you made me look terrible. You know what, Kelly, you can yell at me later on. But for right now, let's solve the immediate problem. That's my point.
Yep.
And that's what you want to have happen because, they're going to want to scream. And to some extent, you have to let them huff and puff. But let's make sure that we get them what they need immediately. So, but here's the thing. Kelly, what happens? You've done this before. You've sold your share of print. You've had your share of problems. What if the customer signed off on the proof? Now what do you do?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because you're going to get a lot of different reactions. Some customers are going to say, you should have caught it, and you're thinking, really, my pressman's a proofreader now? That's kind of unreasonable, but depending on their attitude, what we typically used to do was offer to reprint the order at cost. If they were a good customer, and we want to, again, it's about resolution. This is about solving the problem. So, we put our heads together and said, how can we, make this easier on them so that nobody loses their job or something like that?
Sure. Yeah, it's especially essential when it's your contact that you're trying to protect. So yeah, you got to handle that with kid gloves. And sometimes, you know what's even harder than that, Kelly, is when they don't know that it's their fault. They're screaming at you, and they don't know that they have partial responsibility in this. There's that gray area that's like, well, we could say to the customer, you signed off on the proof. That's a tough one. But you know what? What if the customer comes back and says, you know what, I will never buy, I wouldn't buy soap from you. I will never buy anything from you ever again, Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all heard that, and again, this is about, trying to allow them to vent and try to diffuse it as best you can. And you know what I find to be interesting about these situations is typically the first person to receive the notification is usually the one that gets hit the hardest. So more often than not, the customer service person has gotten it way, way worse than you have. By the time you've gotten back on the phone to say, here's how we're going to deal with this, and they're usually a little bit calmer, but you inevitably are going to hear, I will never do business with you again. And this is, again, where you take your ego completely out of this and say, I completely understand where you're coming from. You have every right to be angry. But what I want to try to remind you of, after the dust settles, is that you and I have a really solid relationship here. I would do anything for you. And, we all make, you don't want to go too much with the cliches, but everybody makes mistakes, and how I resolve this is really how I should be, how I should be assessed at this point. So we really want to try to maintain this relationship. We want to keep it intact as much as we possibly can. And so, if you trust us to give us another order, you are going to get double, triple VIP status. I will personally see to it that every detail is covered on this next order, but it's really important that we try to maintain this relationship.
But you remember we did a short attention span webinar, and we talked about the bank of goodwill. Remember this?
Yes.
And we said that when you do something right, make certain that you point it out to your customer. Because someday, we said, you're going to do something wrong. And you're thinking, oh, the customer loves me and all this other stuff, and they're thinking, that's it, they're gone. What's the name of that other printer that's been calling us time and time again? This is where you cash in those chips, because you have sent them emails and letters that say, hey, Kelly, we just did this job for you, and I know we shipped it in rush, and it really helped you guys out. I want to thank you for the opportunity to show you what kind of a company we are. And if you can do this right, I tell you, it's not a stretch to say that you will come out better on the other end than as if nothing had happened. It's not a stretch. But you've got to make certain that you are following that certain process. The mistake is going to happen. I guarantee it. Even with your best account, it is going to happen. And you need to be ready for it. You need to handle it right. And then go back in with the customer and say, see, this is, there's going to be mistakes in the future, but we're going to try to minimize them. And you know that we're going to stand behind what we do and get it done right. So, we're experts.
Well, and you have to remember too that time heals. They may, in that moment, they may say terrible things, and they may, threaten you and all those other things. But again, once you've solved the problem and things are, the train's back on the tracks, that's the time to go back in and try to start repairing the damage. And typically, more often than not, reasonable people will come back around.
And I read a book on power selling years ago that said that one of the things you do after time settles is you take the customer to lunch, pull them out of their position of power.
Yes.
And it has a psychological effect of just calming and neutral ground and things like that. Very interesting. So, All right, Kelly. Well, because we are two screw-ups ourselves, this short attention span webinar was pretty easy for us. So thanks very much. Oh, God. Yeah, that's fun, right?
Nice.